This is our last work session of the year. Went pretty quickly. But this evening we have quite a bit of work, one of which you've been waiting on for about 12 months. We have a report from Freese and Nichols on the Creek on the Blue Knob, the feasibility study, and we've been anxiously awaiting to hear from them. And then during the budget process, we talked about creating a downtown master plan. So we did an RFQ, and we have a recommendation for you to award a contract, but and that's on the regular agenda, but we want to have just a moment to talk about the work that's going to be done. So Ms. Kathy Field will give you a presentation on that master plan work. And then because of all the other work that we're doing with grant application for housing, we need to amend our comprehensive plan. And so we want to talk about that a little bit as well. And so to kick this off, we're going to call on George Kelley from Freese and Nichols to give us a presentation on the Creek on the Blue Line.
Real quick, I'll read this. So do you want us to take down our mask when we're talking into the phone, or keep them on?
It's up to you.
A little bit of? Okay, hi.
Just don't lean on.
So I'm John Wolfhope. I'm with Freese and Nichols, and we're really glad to be here today to present to you an update on the feasibility study for the Creek on the Blue Mile. This is a very important and very unique project, and we're really feel blessed to be helping the community and the city through this project. I came in just today from Texas, drove in. It was quite a trip coming in. I decided to take the route through Florida and come up through southern Georgia. It was a very interesting drive. Yeah, no. And just to introduce some of our team members, first of all, you can see the presentation we have up. And I just want to mention we have Charles Perry in the audience, and he's our partner with EMC locally here, and we've been working side by side very closely through this project, and we're really glad to have him part of the team because he really understands a lot of the local aspects. And then we have Eric Neese, who's he's our representative for you for Freese and Nichols. He happens to be a very experienced water supply planner, his specialty, doing a lot of planning on the water side. And then I know you met George Kelley before. He's going to come up and present to you where we are on this project. When you get to the end, we would we're here to answer questions and kind of talk to you about where we are and how we see the vision to realize this project successfully. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, Mayor, council members. I'm gonna take this off because if I spend 20 minutes talking with this on it, you might not understand everything I say, and I want to be as clear as I can be here. Let me say, just to start with, I'm George Kelley. I've been the project manager on this project for the last 12 months or so. And this has been a real unique project, as John says, unique and fun. It's been fun, and I kind of thought it would from the start. I thought it would be fun. Working with a good team, with DNC and with the city staff here, Charles, John, Jason. It's been a great time. I mean, the whole time we've had our differences about things, but they've only been toward helping the project develop its course and succeed. So let me say, this presentation I've got, it's only got 25 slides or so in it. I'm not going to read the report. It's a big report. If you've seen it, it's over 700 pages. So hopefully I'm going to shy away from doing things like that and just sort of try to give you the essence of the report and the context of what we've been doing for 12 months. And you can see from the introductory slide here that we have a concept out there now of what this project is based on the request for proposal and the criteria and goals that we started with. Hopefully I don't mess up with these arrows. Point over here. Okay, whoops, too far. Okay, start with, I'm going to sort of review a little bit about the project. I know every time we've met with the council, we go through a review first and just remind you of here's what we started with, here's our goals, here's our criteria and our values for this project. And then I'm going to kind of show you where we've gone with it and what the results are, some conclusions and recommendations and so forth. The overall concept, Creek on the Blue Mile, is kind of displayed here in this first slide. You can see on the left, you've got the reservoir with a little blue shape, that's the water supply pool, and the green shape, that's the flood control pool. There's a dam that runs parallel to Little Lots Creek. Little Lots Creek is the blue line that runs through the entire project work site. All these numbered items, you can read those on the slide. They're elements of the project that we've had to deal with. We've had to work with, come up with conceptual answers for, if you will, and model, put into our models. I'm an engineer. I like to talk about models and things, but I'm going to try to shy away from that and just speak layman's language if I can. That's hard for me sometimes. I often don't have a way with words, but I'm going to try. Okay. The key features of the project, as you all are acquainted with, we're looking at 100-year floodplain mitigation and floodway mitigation. And that's just reduction of the flooding areas that are naturally occurring along Little Lots Creek and in this project area. Maintaining a flow within that linear park or that channel improvement area so that this pedestrian walkway area will be a possibility. A focal point for the project would be a park, Lonnis Barrett Regional Community Park, somewhere in or around the project or the reservoir. And then, of course, a backup water supply. First of all, I'd like to look at the flooding that occurs in the area. This graphic just displays in the blue, you see the FEMA floodplain, which is indicated on their flood insurance rate maps. Many people are familiar with these, especially those in governmental jurisdictions who have to deal with flooding or communities that flood. And these show the existing flood areas and the floodway, which is an area that's prohibited to be developed because it floods so much. So the blue is the 100-year flood area, and the red, which is to the right of that, the red and the blue, is the downstream flood area and floodway, which really is what this project is mostly about. And of course, we do show the 500-year flood on there in the gold, which outlines the blue because it's a much larger flood and would occur, should it occur, there would be more extensive flooding, of course, than we're talking about here. Okay, and a primary goal of the project is kind of displayed here. We see to the left this blue area, which represents the reservoir. The flooding from rainfall that occurred during a 100-year flood, we'll say, would be captured in the reservoir, as is shown there. So all the 100-year flood captured in the reservoir, and then the downstream floodway, indicated by that red line that proceeds to the right of the reservoir, it says floodplain and floodway, would be spared from that flooding by capturing the water in the reservoir. And all that area would then be usable by the community, or more usable. Then we're going to look at a couple of sections here, a couple of pictorials, if you will, a couple of pictures of what concepts have been developed regarding this development of the channel, this pedestrian walkway, this linear park along Little Lots Creek downstream of a dam and reservoir. You see here, this is a typical retail section, retail or residential, indicating to the right and left of a channel, which is in the center of this picture, you'd have hardscape and development of some kind, storefronts, residential property, residential apartments, whatever. It would be development. And then in the center would be the channel, which carries the water, which would make this a pleasant community walkway or pedestrian avenue. And we also have a section of the same project in a park setting, where a channel with basically the same dimensions and the same characteristics would flow through a park area. And the main difference here being the development located on each side of the channel. There would be mostly open areas, trails, picnicking, parks, just areas for the community to use at large or in an open space. Okay, from this point on, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we have done in the study and how far we have gone. Here we display a concept of the reservoir and the dam that we developed. Given the criteria that this dam and reservoir is developed on this parcel of property, this is what we have developed as a concept which will achieve the goals. You can see from this concept the black line that outlines the exterior in the center of the picture is basically the outline of the grading or the construction that would have to occur to develop a reservoir large enough to capture the flooding that would occur in Little Lots Creek and from the upstream watershed. The blue area and shape that you see in the center is basically what you'd see every day. From day to day, there'd be a normal pond that would be visible from pretty much all areas of the site. And that's what would contain the water supply, or the backup water supply. And we call that our conservation pool. So that would be there normally all the time. And then the black line that outlines it all would be the area that impounds the flooding for the reservoir. And of course, along the top side of that reservoir is where the dam is located. And you can read from the slide the various components that are necessary for a dam like this to meet regulatory requirements and technical engineering requirements in order to achieve its purpose and goals. And there is a diversion structure to the far left, which would basically serve to divert Little Lots Creek into the reservoir during times of high water. There is a primary spillway outlet structure, which would allow you to maintain this water supply, normal pool, during all times. There is an auxiliary spillway outlet and conveyance that would allow the 100-year flood to pass and not overtop the dam, so it would be like a safety feature. And then, of course, there is an emergency spillway, which would serve as a spillway that passes the design storm for the project, which is what is required by the state dam safety requirements. So that's our design, dam, and reservoir concept. Let's talk a little bit about wetlands. Wetlands on this piece of property exist. And you can see from the picture there, a little tan stippled area in the center of the picture are actually the wetlands that we went out in the field and measured, delineated, surveyed, and mapped. And It is a fairly large area and covers a great big portion of that piece of property, that land parcel. So overlaying on top of that wetlands is the gold area, which is the floodplain, or the flood area from the 100-year flood. And you can see, just from the overlap, why this is a wetland. Because from flooding in years past, this whole area just kind of stays wet and has evolved into land and vegetation that is now defined as a wetland. And if a wetland exists and your project has to impact it in any way, then there are mitigation rules that have to be met. So given that wetlands, with a reservoir placed on that same piece of property where the wetlands are, you see the impacts. These are the wetland impacts of this project. It practically covers the entire area. I think our complete area of wetlands was measured to be something of the order of 29 acres. And 26 acres of that 29 acres is impacted by this reservoir. So it's almost the entire wetlands, forested wetlands and streams area there. Okay, permitting. Let's talk a little bit about that. Environmental permitting. This is where the Army Corps of Engineers comes into play. We did look at wetlands and streams. We went out and measured the wetlands in size. We classified it. We delineated it. We have maps of it ready to show to the Corps of Engineers or anybody else that wants to know or needs to know. And also for the streams that exist. We looked at cultural resources. There are no major concerns with cultural resources that we find. There were 11 cultural resource sites identified, 2 of which were qualified for National Historic Register. So there are possibly, and may be, concerns for mitigation of that cultural resource, though it wasn't completely identified in our survey. Water quality, we looked at water quality. We set up stream stations where we sampled and measured various characteristics, bacteriological and biological, in the streams and in the groundwater. And it did show some bacteria and metals, especially during rainfall and runoff times. But, you know, it indicates that it's mostly from unknown sources. It's not inhabited there naturally. It comes from runoff when rains occur. And we looked at geotechnical aspects of the project, and they're satisfactory. We looked at water supply. Is there enough water in the stream to supply the quantity that was requested in the proposal? 35 million gallons of storage. Yes, there is. 100,000 gallons per day supply. Yes, there is. And you see on this slide, there's a graph of the proposed reservoir from the year 1980 through 2018, a period of almost 30 years measured using our data from previous storms and information on other sites. And you can see there are a few spikes going down. That horizontal line across the top represents level pool elevation, 35 million gallons all the time at that level. Anything less than that is undesirable. So there are a few periods where you have spikes that are less than that supply, but not significant spikes. And they represent droughts. So those droughts, as you can see, recover fairly quickly within 12 months or so. So yes, that water supply and that yield is there. It is constant. Cost. As a part of this project, we were asked to look at and give our opinion of construction cost. And that's what OPCC is, opinion of probable construction cost. We did this according to standards in the industry that are set by the AACE, and For this type of project, with the maturity level that it has, and at the conceptual stage at which it is, we're pretty much required to use a class 4 level estimate for the project. So that's what we did. And you can see from the numbers there what they are. We are giving them in the ranges that are specified in this class 4 estimate, which range from a minus 10% to a plus 45%. But our estimate for the project was right at $44.5 million. So these numbers just sort of have that in the center and are on each side of that. Findings. We looked at the reservoir design and you saw it. We do think a reservoir is possible, the water supply is possible, the mitigation is possible. We looked at all those aspects. We looked at the dam design. You know, that did come across well. I mean, there are risks with any dam that's designed and built, as there would be with this one, but they are, you know, you are able to overcome those, and the dam is achievable. Water quality, we looked at that, and aside from, you know, the things that have been mentioned, water quality is something that you'll have to be concerned about going forward in any case. And we looked at the cost of the reservoir and dam construction, environmental mitigation, and fair use of water. But, you know, in the end, I'd just like to say that this project is feasible. It is doable. You know, the projected costs are greater than the original cost estimate was. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to propose with the city and the stakeholders of this project, is to hold a workshop, if you will. A workshop that would help you identify goals of the project, cost savings, if you will, and any other thing about the project, reductions, other aspects that might help you achieve your objectives for the project. And we're offering to do that within the same contract we have now, not for any extra cost, but just to help you make decisions about how to make this project work for you and the community. And we'd like to find a path to be able to make this project a reality. And that's
So Mayor and members of council, like George is standing, folks are here. I do think it's really important that I share with you, Freese and Nichols has done what we asked them to do. We laid out, when the RFQ was done, we laid out that we needed to, in order to make this project work, we need to buy land, we need to have it impounded. And so what we asked them to do was to do a feasibility study to see if that was possible. And then we asked them to give us an estimated cost. And that's what they have done for us. And recognizing we do have some funds, but this is beyond the funds that we have. And I would just say as a city manager, I appreciate the fact that they're willing to come in and work with us to look at ways to make the project work. So today we're not saying we're done. The most critical pieces of the project, and I'm not saying the reservoir and all that's not important, but when George, did you go back to the promenade where you show the floodplain and the floodplain? Here. Come back where you can show, we talk about the walkways.
Oh,
Yeah.
the cross sections. Here,
So the important piece, and just for layman's terms, I'm not an engineer, so I have to get it real simple for me. When we talk about floodway, and just a reminder, you can't build in the floodway. You can't do anything. The only thing that's probably acceptable in the flood was a dock, a boat dock, or something like that. But other than that, you're not even supposed to go there and move dirt around with a spoon, because you get in trouble with the feds by doing that. And you also jeopardize your flood insurance if you start doing that, but you're not supposed to build in it. Now, you can go into the 100-year floodplain and you can build in the 100-year floodplain. But you have to put restrictions there as well, because you want to build above base flood elevation, so that hopefully if the property does flood, you don't run somebody out of business. But by being able to create that reservoir, you would be able to, we'd be able to get a map amendment, so that then when the water rises, you don't have to worry about property flooding. So the important piece is trying to figure out if we can achieve some of that at a lower cost. And that is what George is offering to us, to come back, do a workshop with the stakeholders to see if we can find a way to get to where we want to be. And I do appreciate Freese and Nichols for being willing to work with us within the current budget to be able to get that done. So we do thank Freese and Nichols and their partners.
Is there any discussion by council?
Can I just ask one question? I apologize, I didn't get through the whole report in advance. But tell me about the cultural resources briefly, please.
the cultural resources. Well, we did a cultural resource survey, which is a desktop survey. You examine all the entire area of the project, which includes like 127 acres, I think, for this project, the entire area. And you discover the resources that are located within that area that either qualify for registration on National Historic Places or other, federal or state requirements on cultural aspects of the site. And what we discovered was 11 individual areas or 11 individual elements that could possibly require or could possibly sort of prop their head up as issues that need to have mitigation efforts or things like that, which are 2 railroads. I think there was a shopping center, 5 residences, and an industrial complex, and one other thing, I can't remember it, but they're all there in the report. And out of those, there are only 2 that were really, sort of raise your eyebrows. These are eligible for registration in the National Register of Historic Places. And I think it's the 2 railroads, if I'm not mistaken. And they're not registered there, but they're eligible. So, I mean, that just raises the question that, well, somewhere or sometime, these could become cultural resources that someone wants to question or bring to light or do something with.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
So Mayor and Council, what we would propose, sometime after the first of the year, hopefully when the days get a little bit longer, to bring Freese and Nichols and schedule a workshop in the community and to work through these issues. Freese and Nichols will be meeting with the Creek on the Blue Mile tomorrow, and they'll be going through the same presentation and probably have a lot more questions as well. But the good thing is they're here, they're an important resource to us, and we want to take advantage of it. Thank you.
Anything else from council? Senate, there's nothing from the council. Mr. Payne, if you'll continue with the agenda.
Yes, Mayor, Council, I'm gonna call on Ms. Cassie Fields to come forward and talk about the downtown master plan.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the City Council.
How you doing, Joe?
By way of background, the previous downtown master plan was completed in 2011, prior to many of the current downtown initiatives and policies that have happened since then. In the downtown district, there is need to identify and update development and land use patterns, analyze current market dynamics and incentives, and consider new zoning for the historic Crossroads City Center area. Also, to develop strategies to increase the presence of the university and students within the study area, to review the city's design standards for the downtown district for possible updating, and to integrate all of the plans previously developed affecting this area, including the South Main Street Tax Allocation District, the Blue Mile Master Redevelopment Plan, the Creek on the Blue Mile, 2019 Transit Feasibility Study, and the South Main Street Streetscape Plan. So after developing realizing that there was a need to look at the downtown area, we then embarked on a solicitation process. And we advertised with an RFQ and received 5 proposals from planning consulting firms. Of these 5, 3 firms were interviewed by a search committee, and the top choice of the committee was TSW, which is a planning consulting firm from Atlanta. The project timeline is that the project is to begin within 30 days of contract execution, and that all work on the project is scheduled to be completed by the consultant by July, unless the city agrees to an extension. And the consultant and city staff will hold public presentations for input and comments, as well as a series of stakeholder meetings. The deliverables are 3 main items. First, we will achieve an updated master plan for the downtown. Secondly, we're proposing a new zoning ordinance for the historic Crossroads, and I'll show you on a slide what that area encompasses on the next slide. And thirdly, we will achieve a detailed action plan to implement the master plan that identifies the following items: a market study of potential funding sources. It will identify implementation partners, including the DSDA, the Blue Mile Foundation, Georgia Southern University, and local developers and realtors. It will also help us develop strategies that strengthen the town-gown relationship with the university. It will provide incentives and funding sources, also a timeline, catalytic projects, and a demonstration project. And the next slide shows that orange area is where we are proposing to revise the zoning ordinance for that. Is what we deem the historic Crossroads area. And the yellow, of course, is the whole downtown area that we'll be looking at as part of the master plan. And that is my presentation. Any questions?
Council, any questions?
No, ma'am?
And this will be on the agenda.
What rezoning are you talking about? You didn't really outline that.
The, if you go back, the area shown on the map in the orange area, which is essentially what we deem the historic Crossroads, the historic part of the downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is to start with that in terms of looking at a revision to our zoning ordinance for that area, and then expand it incrementally in the future.
Revise it how?
Pardon me?
How?
How?
Yes, you say you're gonna revise it. What revisions are you proposing?
Well, as a result of the master plan, the master plan will come first, and based on the findings of the master plan, then the zoning will be proposed at that point. So it'll be a 2-part segment, or 2-part process, I should say.
Okay.
Okay.
So you don't have those outlined at this point?
No. If you can think of the zoning as an implementing tool for the master plan.
Kathy, if I understand correctly, this is our opportunity to ask you questions, but basically we'll vote at our meeting today about spending the money to authorize a master plan for downtown that's going to kind of collaborate all these other pieces. It's going to put it all together. Thank you.
Mayor and Council, it is just real important for I think our city and for the region. We talk about a strong city center, but making sure that we have those components in that city center that makes downtown come alive. And so either you create a destination location, or you create more housing in the downtown. And we do have quite a few people already living in the downtown area. But how can we do more to create that critical mass for our downtown, and where would be the appropriate place to have more housing? And then we also, as we look at the creek on the Blue Mile and how that develops, making sure that they're developing in the right way, so that what happens in downtown complements what happens on the creek on the Blue Mile. But what happens on the creek on the Blue Mile doesn't pull away from downtown, they complement each other. And then the other piece of it is tying to the university. What can we do to pull more students into the downtown area and make that tie between the university and the center city stronger, that makes it pop, like some other college towns. And so this is a great opportunity for us to determine what it is that we want in the downtown. We got great bones, but how do we make some of these projects come alive? So an important part of the process is to have that public input. And then from that public input, you'll end up finding someone, may pique somebody's curiosity, and someone with some capital that's willing to invest in our downtown to make it really different. And so this is an exciting time, and I appreciate the mayor and the council for pushing forward with this project, because with the economy right now in a slowing point, we could have waited, but it's probably, I think it's smarter to go ahead and get this done, so that as we come out of the economic downturn, we have already finished our master plan, so that hopefully we're going to have some budding entrepreneurs or some investors that are willing to take a chance on downtown Statesboro. So I think it's a great opportunity, and so we are going to recommend to you that you approve TSW as a consultant to lead us through this process. But again, they're not going to be leading by themselves, because staff and all of us will be an important part of that process.
Thank you. Any questions by council? All right. Seeing that there's none, we'll move on to the next one.
Well, Kathy's not going to lead.
Are you going to be free?
She's just going to step into the next.
Okay. All set? Okay, so I'd like to talk about the proposed amendments to the 2019 comprehensive plan. And by way of background, in order to achieve consistency with the following projects that the city has recently undertaken or committed to undertaking, minor amendments need to be made to the city's comprehensive plan, and they are proposed to achieve this purpose. And the projects that are underway and that we've been talking to you all about include the urban redevelopment plan, which is scheduled for approval next month, the revitalization strategy for the Johnson Street neighborhood, scheduled for approval in April, the community housing improvement program, which is the CHIP grant application, scheduled for approval in January next month, and the community development block grant application, scheduled for approval and submission in April of 2021. So we're going to propose minor amendments to include all of these applications within the comprehensive plan, which is a requirement by Department of Community Affairs. And the minor amendments will be proposed to the following sections of the 2019 comp plan. And we're going to amend the vision statement, the housing goals, the community profile, the land use, including existing and future land use, the residential redevelopment areas, the needs and objectives, the community work program, and we're also going to include a section that encompasses the proposed improvements for Grady Street Park and the Luetta Moore Park, which again is a requirement. So the process and timeline will be that you will see this agenda item at your January 5th meeting. You will be holding the public hearing, and then you'll be asked to consider approval at that meeting. And the reason is that because of the public hearing advertising requirements, we need more time to advertise for that public hearing. Hence, it will appear at the January 5th council meeting. And after what you hope will be an approval by the city council at that meeting, we will then submit it for review to the Coastal Regional Commission, which is the next part of the process. And the goal of this exercise essentially is that these proposed minor amendments to the comp plan will demonstrate the city has a unified voice and vision on future CHIP and CDBG grant applications. That's really the important thing, is that we have a cohesive vision, and by making these amendments, that accomplishes that purpose. So this one on January the 5th. And that is my presentation. Anyone have any questions?
Any further questions for the council?
Sounds like y'all been working hard to get all these ducks in a row.
Oh,
All these good things coming up for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We're keeping all the balls in the air.
So we appreciate you.
And we thank the mayor and the council, because y'all generate all this, and then we got great staff
Yeah.
to make it happen. And so we want to appreciate them as well, because Kathy's doing a great job. You got Justin and the whole staff, and Jason. And so hopefully we're gonna bring home some bacon.
That's right. That's what we want.
By tofu too. By getting all these things in order, and so that Statesboro, we like $2 million announcements, but we'll take $1 million here, $500,000 there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we have to do all of these things so we can make sure we're ready.
Thank you.
And Mayor,
That's it?
that's my agenda.
Good deal. Wow, 45 minutes.
Good. First time.
Yeah, a long time.